Welcome to Life Mastery Radio with Todd Allen and Jackie Bailey, the show that dives into the science of higher consciousness with inspiring topics such as abundance, intention, health, manifestation, love, and transformation. Join Todd, Jackie, and their guests of leading authors, speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific. Learn to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery. It's all right here with stories and messages to support your well-being and most evocative dreams. Now, here's your hosts, Todd and Jackie.
Hey, you know what I'm going to say? It's another groovy day. And why is that? It's because I make it that way. When I wake up in the morning, I decide it's going to be a groovy day before my feet hit the floor. And guess what? It usually works out that way. But something might change. Something might happen. I can always just think back. I started out groovy. Now, how can I turn this around? How can I get back in the groove and make it a groovy day? And it just happens. That's the way it works. And it can work for you too. We have a really special guest today, and there's something that I used to do that I don't do anymore, and that's focus on getting connected before the show. So let's just take a minute and focus on our breath for a second and focus on getting connected to the universe, spirit, God, Allah, the dude, whatever it is that you believe in. Let's just take a minute, deep breath, and focus on what that is. What is it that you connect to? Nature, the sun, the beach. Relax, breathe out. One more time, in with a deep breath, way down deep. Think about that connection and breathe out. You might even do this. That's what I do, and it works great. Welcome to Life Mastery Radio, the talk show that brings you great thoughts and ideas for you to use on your very own life mastery journey. And I can guarantee you today's show is going to give you some great thoughts and ideas to get clear and concise and move in a direction that is peaceful, heartwarming, and what else can I say, Jackie?
Connecting,
enlightening. I mean,
connecting to nature. Yes.
It's a groovy way to live. And I think that, well, we're going to talk about that. But before I do, as always, I have my co-host with me today, and she has a couple of co-hosts with her today.
I have angels on my shoulders today.
That's so cool.
I am in the middle of summer camps here at the Speak Feed Lead studio, and two of my students, Ashvi and Soham, are with us today, excited to be on a radio show with our special guest. Say, wave everybody. Wave, guys. There we go.
And so tell us what you're doing this week. What is it that you guys are up to? You're giving them instruction on how to speak from the heart and doing all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah, what have you guys learned this week? Want to say anything?
We learned about writing. We made this poster.
Like a vision board, yeah.
Vision board. And we read some books about, Anna Mary.
We perused Maria's book today or yesterday and did some activities with that. And so they are excited to be able to ask her some questions.
Yeah. You guys went in the park, reviewed her book, and then you got up and you went around and hugged some trees, is what I understand. Is that right?
Yep.
We did, yes.
But
this week our focus is on being a competitive speaker. So they're learning how to give a competition speech.
Very cool. What did it feel like to connect to a tree? Did you really feel connected?
We love the honesty. Yeah, Ashvi says it might take a couple weeks, which is similar to Anna Marie's experience as well. So we didn't feel too bad.
Oh no, it's a great way to start. And you know what? We'll probably find out from our guest today, but it's just practice. So that's just like riding a bike. We just got to get in the groove. All right. What else do
Absolutely.
we have? I want to remind our listeners that today's show page is at www.lifemasteryradio.net or .com. Any links that we talk about, there's a link there to our guest. And if you want to explore more, I believe her book is available and you can find it in many of the outlets. And you can, it's an amazing book. We're going to talk about it.
Anna Maria, do you have a copy of your book you can show us while we're there we go.
Of course she does.
Nice.
Speaking of which, while you're on the website, checking us out, checking her out, checking everything out, you can check out my book too, 6 Keys to Life Mastery. Jackie has a book. There's a link there to it. She's also in another book.
Compilation book, heart notes.
She wrote a love letter. She wrote a Dear John letter. Many of you know what a Dear John letter is. A goodbye. Dear John letter to Lack, and it's very interesting.
Kicked Lack out the door.
See you later, dude. Oh my goodness, it's crazy. And sign up for the newsletter. On the website, there's a link. You can sign up for the newsletter. Jackie publishes it every week. It highlights who's been on the show, who's coming on the show, and of course, a blog post about the show that we just did. So if you want to stay informed, that's the only thing that email address gets used for is that newsletter. And we'd appreciate it if you tell a friend about it. We have such cool guests, and you're going to find out today. We have such cool guests, and we talk about such cool things. And I think more people need to hear about, especially the things we're going to talk about today. Oh my gosh, I feel like I chased my tail on that one. Okay, are you ready for the show? Let's see if I
ready. This is exciting.
Notes. Our guest today is Maria Vasquez. And she is a multi-sensory animal and nature intuitive and a shamanic practitioner. As a natural energy reader, she lifts the veil between what's occurring in the physical world and the energetic patterns behind it. Through teaching, speaking, and remote sessions, Ana Maria helps others understand the spiritual messages coming from nature. She has a book, and it is called Nature. We already saw it. There it is. Divine Experiences. This book will blow you away. I guarantee. Read this book, and it will have you. Well, look what Jackie did. She took a group of kids out and hugged some trees, and I'm sure it had an effect. Divine Experiences with Trees, Plants, Stones, and Landscapes is a book in common sentience, an uncommon book series that shares spiritual wisdom and true stories of the mystical experiences we are having in our everyday lives. Ana Maria, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you today?
Hello, I am so delighted to be here. And the fact that you have this platform to have these kind of soulful conversations, and the fact that we have co-hosts for our co-hosts, like, it's just so exciting. And I know there's a tortoise in the room and there's a dog in the room. Like, we are in the right place today for sure.
Oh, it gets better. I have 2 cats, 2 dogs, and 4 chickens that aren't very far away from me today. And I live in the woods where there's deer, raccoons, and possum. And oh my gosh, they're setting off my cameras all the time. So it's really cool. And fawns. This is the time for fawns. And I saw a doe a couple days ago, and she had twins, and it was really cool. And they were so little. I mean, they couldn't have been more than, I don't know, 2 or 3 days old.
And they still have the little spots on their backs.
Oh yeah. And very curious and very kind of wobbly and following mom and real close. It was pretty cool. It was quite the experience. But Ana, you wrote this book, and you have been working with nature. How long? Tell us your story. What's your story?
You know, people ask me, like, did you come out of the womb doing this stuff? And I didn't, right? Like everyone else, you know, I had a semi-normal upbringing. And so there was no kind of thought that I was an animal communicator or a tree talker or anything like that. And part of it was, we didn't even have language like that when I was growing up. I didn't even know that was a thing. But I did have a very profound connection to animals and nature. And I did have quite a chaotic upbringing, and I would go to the trees, I would go to nature very often as a place of refuge. And I hear that all the time from folks that resonate with my work. Oh my gosh, yeah, I would climb up in the tree, or, whatever it was. But all of that helped me connect and really tune into the energy. And flash forward, right? I'm going through a big life tsunami where kind of everything falls apart. The rug is pulled out from under you. All the relationships you had are gone. The jobs, the properties gone, right? Like, and there you are sitting in the pile of ashes that used to be my life, going, I thought I did everything right. I thought I did everything I was supposed to do. And I had this knowingness that, okay, I have to rebuild, and I'm rebuilding from ground zero. So if I'm going to do this, then I need to do it in a way that works for me, where I feel absolutely connected. And I get that there's more going on than meets the eye, because if it is just rinse and repeat until I die, that does not sound very compelling to me. I'm not very motivated to participate in that. And so I really took it seriously, and I decided to take all the spiritual platitudes that we hear, the law of attraction, all the universal principles. And I thought, well, either these are real and I can learn how to work them and learn the mechanics, or it's just a bunch of hooey, right? Designed to help us feel better till we just die. And I thought, well, let me see. So I took it into my living laboratory, and I worked with these things. And like you mentioned earlier, there's a story in the book about this. I had a teacher that had said, because my deepest desire was to connect with the animals, to talk to the animals, two-way conversation. And my teacher gave me an assignment to be with a tree, putting my hands on a tree for 30 days. And I was kind of confused about the assignment, because I'm like, well, I'm asking about animals. And she explained that it's all energy, it's life force energy, and you're raising your vibration, you're kind of recalibrating your field to connect to these other energies. And I thought, this is just busy work. She doesn't know how to help me figure this out. So she's just got me doing something. And, I have a healthy, skeptical mind. And I thought, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And if for no other reason to say, see, I did it and it didn't work. What else have you got? And I got to tell you, very similar to the kids in the camp, the first few weeks, nothing happened. I just felt kind of silly standing outside, hugging a tree, talking to a tree, but I kept doing it, right? Like, I didn't even know if I was, inappropriately touching the tree. And I don't know. I don't know what this is, but I do trust my teacher. I do trust the masters that I've read and learned from. And so I'm going to do this. And if you can help me get past the skepticism, that'd be great. Well, for 3 weeks, nothing happened. And I thought, okay, but somewhere in the 4th week, I was actually inside. I had already done my tree hugging for the day, and I was in my living room, and I asked a question out loud. You know how when you're just sitting there working on stuff and you just kind of talk? And I asked a question, but I heard an answer. I audibly heard an answer. And what was interesting is it felt, even though I heard it where in the room where I was, it felt like the answer was coming from outside where the tree was. And I thought, this is not possible. This is kind of crazy. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I finally hit my breaking point. And so I stood up and I looked out the window and I said, was that you? And I got a yes, another audible yes.
Oh.
Oh my goodness. And I really was concerned, like maybe I had a break. And I thought, well, okay, I know enough about resources. I can get myself some help, but this is a curious situation happening. So I asked some more questions, and what came out of my mouth immediately, because I'm human and it's embarrassing to me now considering all the work that I do, but it speaks to our human condition. So I said to the tree, well, this is all fine and well, but I asked to talk to animals. I don't know what to do with a talking tree. And I heard a chuckle. The tree chuckled back at me. And so I was like, oh boy. And she explained that will come. This is a part of the process that you're going through. And sure enough, within, I want to say about 8 weeks, I started having very profound experiences with animals showing up, almost like, like in Star Wars, when Princess Leia is delivering that message through R2D2, like the way that is projected, that's how I started to see different animals that would show up to tell me something, whatever it might be. And so I was like, oh, there is something to all of this. And I continued to go deeper. And it's interesting because I really wanted to connect with the animals, but because it started with a tree, my connection with the trees and with nature, that really took off. Yeah, I did go on to read for other people and talk to animals and help people and their animals all around the world. But to this day, right, like my personal teachers really are the trees and the rocks. And I'm that person who, when something amazing or even difficult happens, instead of texting my friends or family, I run out to the trees and I go sit with them and I tell them, then I inform everybody else of what's
right. Or ask questions. I know for me, if I'm contemplating something, I mean, I studied with some shamans many, many years back, and I always rely on nature. I'll go sit in nature and just wait for the answer. And it's amazing how in tune the animals are that are around me, right? I'll be contemplating something and then get away from it, and I'll be washing dishes and look up, and here's a deer looking at me through my window, right? And and then a solution or something just magically pops in my head, or a raven will land on my table out on the deck. It's just, it is truly amazing. And but I guess my what I want to get to, Anna, is everybody can experience this.
Yes, that's the thing. Like, it's great that I had that experience, and it's great that you can read about it. But what's always been more important to me is that all of us have these abilities, right? Like, and I feel like I'm the poster child for that, where I was like, I don't know, this seems kind of crazy. I don't think this can happen. And then bam, it happens.
Well,
and
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's other processes you can do to build those muscles. And that's what I've learned, is how to teach other people how to do that. And I call it unpacking your intuitive backpack, right? When we're out on a hike and we have a backpack on, we can't get to our trail mix or the map or the flashlight that's at the bottom. Sometimes we're not even sure if it's in there. But if you have somebody with you, a hiking buddy, they can reach in and be like, oh, here it is. Here you go. And so it's easier for us to step into these inherent abilities that we have.
I was just going to say, that's what's so cool about your book. Your book is in 3 parts. And the first part kind of explains the process and what it is all about. But then the second part is all other people's stories that people can relate to. And both Jackie and I know for sure that if there's one thing that will teach somebody else or instruct somebody else or inspire somebody else, is their story. And that is really cool. And then the third part of your book, of course, has practices and really, Anna, I got to tell you, that's a cool book you wrote.
Thank you so much. And that has been the feedback, not just folks who are on their path and are like, oh yeah, I knew there was something, but friends that I've had my whole life who knew me before I started doing this and who are like, let me see what this girl's up to. And they're like, oh my gosh, oh my goodness, I never thought of that, but this makes perfect sense. And so it feels like that piece, right? Like, before someone could do a 4-minute mile, no one could do it. And then someone did it, and then everyone saw that people could do it, and then they started doing it.
Right.
And that was the point of having the stories, right? That because it inspires people and they can see how these things might transpire. And I've had so many people write me and say, I'm not even done with the book, and I'm already having these experiences. It's like the book flipped a switch.
So how did having these initial experiences then help you start to heal from the challenges and maybe even the personal trauma that you were experiencing at the time? Or did it help?
Oh, it absolutely helped, right? It was really my own journey of healing for all of that. And for me to remember and then help other people remember that you're not your story. That's just something, right, that you encountered on the journey. But as we step out of our victimhood and we step into our empowerment as this infinite being embodied in this meat suit, right, that we still have access to a lot of our abilities, but we forget because of the denseness here and the pace, right? Life is so fast paced. We all have some form of ADHD because of our, our devices. But when we slow down, and when we slow down with nature, that life force energy that's flowing through everything in the natural world has an opportunity to actually touch us and remind us, spark that remembrance. So it's very exciting that all of us can do it, right? I'm not just some special gifted person. I just hit rock bottom and realized I better figure this out. And the gift in it is to help other people remember it without having to go through all the drama.
So what can these two young people begin to do to remember the special gifts they have?
Yeah, that's a great question. And even at the beginning of your show, when you were talking about the science and the spirituality, to me, that's the sweet spot. I love hanging out in that place where science and spirituality meet.
You and I are cut from the same rug.
I know, right? It's not that we need the proof, right? But it sure is nice to have some proof, some acknowledgement, some backing on it, so that our lower mind has something to chew on while we're, expanding and stepping into.
I think validation is, and I'm just blown away at what the indigenous people, especially of North America, knew so many years ago and for so long, right? Here the United States and our government's only, a little over 250 years old, and it hasn't been around for very long. But before that, there was thousands and thousands and thousands of years of the beliefs that you're describing that gave people peace and solace and harmony and understanding that they were one with Gaia, really.
Absolutely. And that aspect, I'm having a little technical issue here for a second. Hold on. Oh, please. So that's exactly it. Those pieces that we just weren't remembering about what we have access to. And so that was important to me, right? Like when we're in our tribes, right? Living in the natural world, we had to depend on connecting to nature so that we could remember different things and so that we could prepare. And then we moved out of the woods and we all of a sudden began to forget. That forgetfulness came in.
That's a great way to describe it.
Right. And what we see at different places, whether it's a stone circle or even an ancient temple, those were places to remember. And the rocks themselves, the stones that were used, were part of that remembrance because they are electromagnetic in their beingness. And so they captured those imprints that were originally imprinted in them, and it goes on and it shares it. And so we constantly have the ability to connect with that. And so when we're looking at the natural world, right, like just going outside and hugging a tree, let's just use that for an example, since that was what happened in your camp yesterday, going outside, connecting with the tree. And so there are physical things that are happening. There are negative ions that are being released from the earth herself that help our physical bodies come back into balance. They remember, right? Because when we're in our synthetic environments, we are the largest organic piece of material there. So any unbalanced molecules are going to be looking for that extra electron, and they're going to pull it from our body. When we go back out in nature, we get refilled with those negative ions and it brings us into balance. So for even just school, right? Like if we're just trying to do better in school, if we're trying to do better in anything that we're doing, if we go outside for at least 5 minutes, we're going to get flooded with those negative ions, bringing ourselves back into balance.
Right.
As we're coming back into balance, that life force energy, right, that divine mind can begin to get a word in edgewise. And that's when the inspiration strikes.
Interesting. I think we had one question yesterday as we were reading through some of your book. The word sentient came up. And I think it was Ashvi had a question about what is a sentient being? What does that mean?
That is a great question. Yes. And so, of course, there is, the Webster's definition of sentient being. And then really the way and the spirit in which I am talking about that is anything that has that life force energy flowing through it. So as humans, we think about our way, right? Like how we have thoughts and feelings and emotions. And there can be a problem sometimes when we project that on to, animals or plants or trees or rocks, but there's something to it about the fact that that being, whether it's a dog, a tree, a rock, a plant, or a lake or a mountain even, that it has a particular energy flowing through it, right? The earth herself has energy flowing through her that has been measured, that can be measured. This is where I love where science can kind of back us up on it. And it's not just a bunch of Fruit Loops out in the woods saying, that tree talked to me, right? Well, it might have something to do with the mushroom you just ate. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about true life force energy going through that. And here's one way, and this would be a really fun experiment to do. And I believe I outlined some of it in the book. If you have dowsing rods, right? And they're the L rods and you hold them, you can go up to a tree and it can show you there we go.
I made some dowsing rods a couple of years ago, but I don't know how to use them very well. So
this is perfect. You guys are already set up for the experiment. So,
yes.
Just like humans, right? We have an auric field. There's our physical body, then there's an auric field that extends. It's an energetic body that extends further. Well, trees have it too. Rocks have it too. And you can go up to a tree. And I always ask permission, right? Because I'm not going to go up to a stranger in the mall and just start doing experiments with them. I'm going to engage them and I'm going to talk and then do my experiments. But you ask the tree, would you like to play with me? I'm going to do this little experiment. And you can know if they say yes, right? People get stuck right there. Like, how do I know if it's a yes or a no? Well, when you ask the question, you're either going to feel lighter, like it's a yes, or you're going to feel heavier, like it's a no, or sometimes you feel nothing and you're like, I'm getting nothing. Or you might feel like you start to lean forward or lean backwards. Again, the forward's a yes, the back is a no. Or you might just have a sensation. Again, it depends how people are wired. Some people might hear even an audible answer. So it depends on your personal wiring. There's nothing that's better or worse about one or another. It's just discovering how we're wired and then working with that. So then you go to the trunk of the tree and you put your back on it and you say, I want to see your auric field. So you put the two L rods there, they should be straight out from you, about, chest level, pointing them straight. And then you start to walk away from the tree. As you start to walk away, all of a sudden, you're going to notice that the two L's start to cross. And when they cross, I want you to look up, because typically the general auric field of a tree is right at the drip line, right? So we all know what a drip line of a tree is. If you're standing under and it's raining, you're going to be dry. Everything outside of that is going to be wet. Now, you can see right there, like, oh my goodness, that's its auric field. Now, if you go back to the tree and I'd say love it up, right? Like tell it, it's so beautiful. Thank you for making oxygen. Thank you for taking care of some of that CO2, all the giving tree things that we know about a tree. Really give that gratitude and then say, I want to see your auric field now. Again, put your back up to the tree, take your dowsing rods, hold them there and walk out. What you're going to notice is when they cross this time, you're going to be about 4 to 6 feet out further. And I just got whole body chills when I said that. And it happens the same to humans, right? When we interact with each other, our field expands. When we get scared, our field contracts. So it's a fun, visceral way for us to see hey, maybe there is something going on more than meets the eye.
And so their field expands because we've shown gratitude. We've talked nicely to the tree.
Interacted with them. We've connected. We've, like when we've got our kids, our partners, even our animals, right? Like when our heart expands, our field expands. It's a very similar kind of concept.
So we could do that with each other as well. You could measure someone else's auric field. Is that possible?
Absolutely do that. Yeah.
Huh. Cool. That's neat. We'll have to do that, guys. What do you think?
Fascinating. Well, did the kids have a question that they wanted to
Yeah,
ask?
do you guys have any questions?
So what was it like in your experience by touching the tree?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I first touched it, it didn't feel like anything, right? It just felt like anytime I've been near a tree and I touch it, like you feel the bark, you feel that. I didn't, and I am someone now, especially who will feel like buzzes and stuff. And I didn't feel anything, which kind of made me feel a little silly, right? Like I just kind of felt silly. So I use that, right? Like that's what I've learned. Nothing in our life experience is ever wasted. So I said, okay, well, I feel silly. This is what's up for me. So I was always honest about what was up. Either I feel silly, or I think this is stupid, or I hurry up and let something happen. But nothing really at the beginning, right? Those first few weeks, nothing felt different other than just there's a tree. But after I had heard her voice, and then when I went back outside, I wouldn't say that it felt like electricity, but I felt like a connection, right? Like in your heart, like when you see your best friend and you're like, oh, there's my best friend, or a favorite, person of yours. That's what it started to feel like. And so now what it feels like when I go and I connect with my best friend trees, right? It feels like that. I feel happy. I feel a little giddy. I feel excited, right? Like when you go see a best friend and they're going to tell you something really cool. It feels like that for me right now.
Wow.
Anna Maria, when you did your first experiment for that 30 days, it was with the same tree then, right?
Yes, I stayed with the same tree. And my understanding is you could switch if you wanted to. But as, like if we take it from the scientific method, it's best to just pick one and stay with it, right? Because otherwise you're introducing other variables that could affect your outcome.
Have you found that all trees are females or just this particular one?
No, absolutely, right? So we've got, again, this part where the biology, right? So an arborist could talk about a female tree versus a male tree and the ones that kind of have both parts going on and all of that. But what I will feel is an energy like, oh, this feels like a girl, or this feels like a boy. But it's not necessarily from like a gender standpoint. It's more in the energetics. But I have met, a mixture, and I've also met some that I couldn't get a feel for either or. It was very much both, a good blend of both of them. And the different personalities, I think that's what blew me away the most, right? Like, I don't know what I thought, but I didn't expect personalities to come through. But I have experienced and other people who have talked to me about their work with trees and connections with trees, same things. The personality spectrum is very, very vast. And I've also come into contact with some trees that weren't interested in connecting, and they weren't mean about it or anything. They were just like, I'm doing something else. I'm not interested. Or they would tell me there's a tree that's better suited to work with you. So fascinating, right? Like it's like I'm looking out at a forest right now and I'm like, whoa, right? Like all those personalities that are out there.
That's cool.
Did we have another question, Jack?
Question? No question.
There's a story in the book about a tree and a horse and a little girl. And this could help too, right? When we're looking for practical ways. So Katie is the one who wrote the story, and she does work with like equine therapy to help people overcome whatever's going on in their lives. So this grandmother had brought her two grandkids there, and the grandson was interacting with the horses and he was loving it. And Katie noticed that the little girl, the 5-year-old, was like scared, right? Like, these horses are just too big. I don't know what's happening
Too
here.
much.
And Katie,
Overload.
what was that?
I said sensory overload.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you're 5, you're little. And so Katie actually heard a tree in the driveway say, bring the little girl over here.
Mm.
And Katie hadn't really worked with trees that much before, but she knew enough from working with the horses to listen. So she took the little girl over to the tree and she said, hug this tree and send all your fear, all your concern into the tree. Let the tree take that from you. And so the little girl's hugging the tree, and she lets go. And then Katie said, would you like to go see a donkey, right? A little bit smaller than a horse. And the little girl's like, yes. So she takes her over to the donkey. That goes great. Eventually, she's able to connect with the horse. But that piece of any strong emotion that we have, that we're feeling overwhelmed with, we can go to nature with that. So, right, maybe we're nervous, we're going to take a test, or something is happening in our life, or whatever it is. We can go, even just, you don't even have to hug the tree, right? Like, if you feel silly doing that, just being in that tree's auric field with your conscious intent to release that fear, they'll help you. They're true allies, and they really have our best at heart. So and children seem to inherently know this, go out in the trees, go outside, and you're going to feel better.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, do you actually have some things that you offer in your book about deepening our connection with nature? You've got a long list of some ways that we can do that. I know earthing, I think, was one of the first ones you mentioned, which sounds interesting. I think it's a new thing. Even my son, who's not necessarily woo-woo, mentioned it to me, and he was doing it. So can you tell us a little bit about earthing is, and maybe some of the other ways that we can deepen that connection?
Yeah, that was a great place to start, because again, there have been published studies about earthing, or grounding is another word for it.
Yeah.
But essentially, you have either your bare feet on the ground. It's best the connection is strongest if it's like a moist piece of grass, or even sand on the edge of, on the beach, on the edge of water is a great place. Of course, I live up in the mountains, so we have a short time that we can be barefoot out on, but it also works if you put your bare hands on the trunk of a tree, or even, if you have a big boulder or something that you can sit on, or it's this connection, this absolute connection, again, through the sensors on your feet or on your hands, or if you're rock sitting, right, like your tailbone, which is this huge column of electrical information, right, that's going. And when you sit on a rock, you make a close enough connection for that information flow to start. So they say, the longer you do the earthing or the grounding, the better. You can't overdose on it. At least 5 minutes. That's where they found, like, even if you just run out for a couple minutes, it's good, but it's best 5 minutes or more. And then any kind of consistency that you get, the effects for your physical body just around inflammation alone is phenomenal, and like documented proof of inflammation reducing. And we know inflammation is the root of all disease. So just doing that is very sourcing for us. And again, right, so physically there's some things happening, but energetically there's a recalibration of your energetic field, and it's actually raising your frequency, your vibration. And it's like anyone who does any of this in between the realms conversations, right? Whether it's with people who've crossed over, whether it's with rocks, trees, dogs, horses, you start to learn that the more you raise your vibration, the easier it is to connect and receive the messages from whatever source you're connecting with.
Yeah. Well, so tell me what you've learned from the animals then, because I know that was your original goal, right?
Yeah.
And you've sounds like you've achieved it. It's, to me, as you were describing, starting with the trees, it reminded me of trying to find the right station on a radio, right? Where you have to kind of keep tuning in until all the static is gone. You finally tap into the real source. And so as you now feel like you've tapped into that source and you can talk to animals, what are some of the things that animals have told you?
Well, it's interesting because they've shared, and very similar to what nature has shared, right? Whether it was the trees or the rocks or other plants, this piece about, and all of us who have studied, some of the ancient texts, there's nothing out there. Everything is a reflection of what's going on in here. So everything is mirroring back things for us. Whether it's our dog having a behavioral or a physical symptom, whether it's an ecosystem having some kind of issues, that can be mirrored back to us as well. And the biggest piece two pieces. One is the unity consciousness, right? Like there is no separation between us and the animals, us and the trees. That's just an illusion that we've created in our separation reality. There is nothing. It is, we are them, they are us. And the other piece about all of us can do this.
Yeah.
It is, again, flexing an energetic muscle more so than a physical muscle. But whether you want to talk to a tree, whether you want to talk to your grandma who's crossed over, whether you want to talk to a rock, you can do it. Everything is energy, and energy is neither created or destroyed. It just changes form. And so when we raise our vibration, use our conscious intent coupled with that life force energy that shows up as the element of air in our breath, there's some magic that starts happening that are things that we have absolutely dismissed. We dismiss and downplay our intention and the superpower that it really is. You were talking about this, Todd, at the beginning when you said, I'm going to have a groovy day. And if I don't, I'm going to find a way to shift to come back to it. That's all energy work, right? Our thoughts are actual frequencies that are being broadcast out. So if we're constantly beating the drum of low vibrational things, and I can't do this and I can't do that, and I don't get this and I don't have that, that's what we're going to get back. When we step into the curiosity, the possibility, which is what I love about you having your summer camp, right? Like when we're younger, we remember, we get curious, we lean into the possibility of real magic being there in the world, versus when we get older and settled and we decide that's not possible. And we live in a very narrow spectrum of life, but there's so much more going on than meets the eye. And all of us have the ability to connect in.
In today's world, Anna, we have this younger generation that is slowly becoming more and more disconnected. They don't, and I'm not saying all of them, but there's just like no direction, no sense of understanding where they want to go or what they want to understand. It's just kind of all a big jumble. And for younger people, religion is no longer a solution. But I think what you're teaching and what you're talking about is a viable solution. So what would you say to some of the younger generation in the magic that you described that they would experience?
Yeah, well, they have, and I think back, I think the elders going all the way back have always said that about the younger generations, right? It was just a different cast of characters.
Jack, I'm an elder now.
Right? There's a lot of fun in that too. But I think that is a common human experience that happens. And then we've got, again, a new generation of humans coming onto this planet who are actually wired a little differently than prior generations.
Totally.
And they have this opportunity to have the best of both worlds. So they have, in the technology, they've got access, and it gives them possibilities to things that we would have never thought was possible, right? Like, it's still amazing that this little phone
it blows me away.
So many things. Are you kidding me? That's crazy. And when they remember and learn about the connection to nature, and you couple those two, it's like huge, ability to connect even further and deeper. Yeah. And one of the things that I've learned about technology is it really is just a pale comparison to what our own human and infinite human abilities are. So we don't want to give away our power to the devices. We want to use them and have them help us in our expansion, in doing things that we've never been able to do before. But I feel like this is a generation that's coming up that gets it, right? Like they don't want to be all one thing. They don't want to be all another thing. And I think somewhere in that jumble does help them in the integration of all of it. And I feel like, just like we've had through the course of time, the more time that people, and especially young people, can remember to get outside and connect. And the thing is I know we have a lot of people, they call them indoor kids now, right? Like we used to have indoor cats. Indoor kids, they don't go outside much. But here's what I've learned, right? Like working with people who live, like not everyone gets to live in the forest, like you, Todd, or like me, or near a forest. And people will get really down on themselves and they'll be like, well, then I can't do this. Yeah. But this is what we know about this amazing human brain of ours, is it doesn't know the difference between you physically standing out there with a tree or you visualizing it. And they've done those studies where an athlete will visualize success. And then when they physically do it, it's like the muscle memory is already there. Yeah. And I feel like even if they have access to, pictures of nature and shows about nature, that they're going to be able to connect, and they're going to be able to bring newness that we wouldn't have even known to bring to it. So I feel like, yep, there's a lot of challenges and there's a lot of work to pull people away from their screens. But maybe even some of the nature info could come through a screen as well, to help them remember, because when we remember, we live our lives very differently with each other and with the planet itself.
And so I just got this vision while you were talking about all that it's not so much connecting to the internet, it's connecting to the nature net, right? It's far greater than the internet.
Yeah. They have that saying, you go in the woods, you won't get any, cell service, but you'll be deeper connected. You'll have a greater connection than you ever thought possible.
The nature net.
Right. Yeah. The nature net.
So your book is amazing. I highly recommend everybody just take a gander. You'll be intrigued. You'll be enticed. And I guarantee you'll want to go and experiment with it because here's the recipe for true magic in our lives. But you have in the book some tips, because like we already talked about, this is a simple thing, and everybody's different. Everybody does it their own way. There is no wrong way. There is no right way, as long as you're getting peace and harmony. And you have some tips for connecting naturally, and I'll blow through them and you just see which one jumps out, and we'll let you speak about it. But letting go of expectation, that's huge. Create your own symbology library. So that's your ability to just create what it means to you, and who cares what other people think about me is none of my business. Follow your wonder and curiosity. That is just huge. Notice how you feel. Practice, and always honor your alliance with nature. I mean, all of these are in her book, in Anna's book. And did something jump out at you, Anna?
The symbology library did, because that's one of the first things that people, when they hear what I do, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I found this rock. What does it mean? Right? or I saw this tree. What does it mean? And it's great to have, outside resources, right? In fact, in the appendix in this book, some of the rocks, some of the plants that I work with on a regular basis, I did put what their symbolism is, because it does help us, right? It gets the mind going. But what I found, right, just the mechanics of how intuitive messaging works is the message comes in and hits your subconscious and brings something up for you. And it's very personal for you. So it's great that this is the symbology that I'm sharing. But when you come up against a piece of marble, or you come up against a ponderosa pine, you might have a different gut level reaction that comes up for you. And so you want to play off of that because it's very personal in that. And it's great to go to reference books, but it's more powerful to feel into, well, how do I feel when I think about a ponderosa pine or an aspen tree or a crabapple tree or whatever it is? but it allows you to create your own library so that the next time, whether you're in meditation or talking to someone and boop, an aspen tree pops into your awareness, you'll know, oh, this is about transformation. Okay. And it gives us those stepping blocks. I call it priming the pump, right? We're going way, way back when we had pumps that from our well that you had to pump to get the suction to come up. And that symbolism primes the pump to allow the divine information to come in. So I would say, start getting curious about the nature around you and what it correlates to.
What it means to you, right? What does it do for you? And we always have Google to kind of support that, or even create our own images and our imaginations, right?
Yes, absolutely. And
it reminds me so much of when I was young, Anna Maria, because when I would go off to summer camp as a young girl, I would always find these rocks that were interesting to me. I mean, they were just rocks, but I would pick them up and go, I like this rock. And I would keep this rock. And in fact, one year I remember collecting a stick. We were on a hike and I picked up this stick to sort of help me with this hike that we were, going up a steep switchback. And that stick sort of became my companion. And I actually took it home with me from camp. And I kept it for several more summers to go back to camp with me. And it was when I was a young woman, maybe newly married, and we were downsizing or upsizing into something new. And I had the hardest time getting rid of that stick because it had been with me. And I think back at that now, and I hadn't thought about this for years, but there was a connection with me and that stick. I don't know what it was, but it was something for me that was hard to give up when it came right down to doing so. It was so strange.
Too, I think a lot of people resonate with that. We've had those experiences with what we call inanimate objects, but the truth is, right, like there's life force energy that was flowing through that tree before it was just a stick. Yeah. And when those people who are attracted to different rocks, right, like we know different rocks have different energy and frequency. They're all a part of Mother Earth, right? Like they're just a broken off piece, but each one went through a different process. And that's what really infuses the energy, right? Like if it was an igneous rock created from the fire and the volcanoes, whether it was some kind of sedimentary rock, there's different energies, different fields, different rocks. And so when we're attracted, there's something there. And we want to honor that, right? Like I always talk to the people who have pockets full of rocks because those are my people.
Yeah. It seems so strange, but there's something that you're just drawn to. I was like, I'm going to keep this rock. And it was the same thing too, as I ended up having this collection of these rocks. And later on, I couldn't remember why I ever really picked them up. But at some point they had this connection with me for whatever reason. So it was very interesting.
Oh my goodness, ladies. Looks like we only have 4 minutes left. Can you believe it, Anna, how fast this went by? I mean,
I promise you we did.
Is there a parting message that you would have? Go for it.
I have a final question.
Okay.
Yes, so he has something to say.
Okay, so in my backyard, I found this red rock. I was like, I think that might be from nature or might have just blasted down from Mars. So I kept it. And every day I would just like dream if I would go to Mars to see those rocks.
Very cool.
Nature something's telling us.
Oh, yeah.
See, there you go. That's one way we can get
Imagination.
He did it perfectly, where it connects with something and we wouldn't have thought of it at all, but all of a sudden you can give that focus to, again, whether he physically goes to Mars at some point or whether he travels there, maybe in the astral realm or whatever it is, maybe bringing wisdom from another lifetime on Mars, who knows? But that's how we make those connections. And we lean into those nudges. Like you said, like maybe it came from Mars. We lean into it until we get some other information that tells us something different. But to me, that would be a really good science rock, right? Like a rock to have with you when you're working on science pieces, because it's going to be able to give you that infusion of information. Well done. Good listening.
Nice.
Oh my goodness, Anna, thank you so much for I hope you'll come back on the show. I think there's so much more. Your book is filled with so many cool topics, and I think it would be a great resource for people to get connected. Don't you agree?
Yeah, what I've been hearing and what has even, been happening for myself, right? Because finally, like all my notes from, a dozen years of doing this work are here in one book instead of scattered on, sticky note cards. And so I've got one that I carry around with different things again. So if I need to give someone a tip here or there, but I've heard that too, right, from other authors that they're like, this is the kind of book that you go back to. And you use it as a resource, you use it as a reference, and you go back and you say, how did she say that worked again? So I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share this. And I'm grateful because it wasn't just me speaking, it was really me saying, nature, what do you want to bring through?
Yeah, I highly recommend everything. Jackie, any takeaways? You got a big smile on your face.
Yeah, I've had some really amazing experiences lately with trees and with some birds and even a wolf. So when I have these experiences, I always go and look, what could that possibly mean? What is nature trying to tell me? So I really appreciate the validation from you today that I'm not crazy.
Jackie, I can tell you for sure you're not crazy. Oh my goodness, that's about all we have time for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope that you will tell a friend about the show. And for you to understand, all of our shows are on our YouTube channel on YouTube, Life Mastery Radio with Todd and Jackie. And you'll find an interesting array of topics. This show will be up there by the end of the week. And lastly, what I would like for you to do is check out Anna's book. The link is on our website at www.lifemasteryradio.net or .com. And please, 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 please make it a great day. Make it a groovy day because it is all about choice. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks to my co-hosts today.
Thank you for tuning in to Life Mastery Radio. Join Todd Allen and Jackie Bailey and their guests of leading authors, speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific. Learn to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery through stories and messages to support your well-being and most evocative dreams. Visit their website, www.lifemasteryradio.com. Join their mailing list and be notified about upcoming guests. That's lifemasteryradio.com.